Well, welcome back to the United Pubcast. We finally did get a Here We Go about 12 hours ago. It was a little bit early for us to record. We thought, should we go live? But we're still half asleep, so we thought we'd better have a little bit of a sleep on it and discuss it in further detail after a day. I had a day at the pub. I thought, Larry, I saw a photo at the beach you were at, so had a bit of a day off. And good to discuss a Manchester United signing, Larry. It's not an official signing yet. We haven't got the official announcement, but in the 2023 Fabrizio Romano's Here We Go, I'm sure probably goes into official. I know he got one or two wrong last year, but it pretty much is a confirmation by clubs.
Yeah, it's a good success record. And good evening to you, Tom, and good evening to everyone listening in. A belting day in Sydney, gorgeous weather. It's a little bit concerning, I've got to be honest. When it's the middle of winter and I can walk around with a T-shirt on and the sun's beaming, I always get a little bit concerned because I'm like, oh, man, if this is a warning of what summer's going to be, it's going to be a bad summer.
Well, that's when we were up the other day. The other day when we were up in Gosford watching the England team train, just thinking, could you put your mind in an England player's shoes in terms of the middle of winter? They're training at the Central Coast where it has palm trees, the beach, blue sky. And it must have been degrees, like 25, 30 degrees. I'm just thinking that is the middle of winter. And it hasn't been – some mornings are a little bit cold. I have to give credit where it's due. But all in all, that's been a pretty warm winter.
Yeah, it's cold at night and in the first thing in the morning. But, yeah, once you get to around lunchtime, the sun's definitely good. You don't need a jumper on. But we're not here to talk about Sydney's weather. It's heating up in Manchester United's dressing room because obviously there is a new striker about to join the club. Was that a good transition? I think so.
Smooth enough. And there is a few people in the chat, which I do say good day to everyone there. I'll make sure you get all your thoughts in. I do appreciate you joining us. But Larry, before we get into the ins and outs, and if anyone can hear panting, my dog is very happy with the Rasmus Hojlund signing. As you can see, he's out of breath due to the excitement. So apologies if you do hear a little bit of panting. I don't know what's wrong with him. But before we get into the ins and outs, is a good signing, how much money is it worth, sort of thing. I just want to. We're so critical of the club, Larry, and rightly so. God, look how we've been run in the last 10 years. But in regards to the mess Ed Woodward has put us in the past, let's say 10 years, however long he's been in charge, especially in his transfer dealings, we know there's damage done, and you do need to repair that. That's going to take a lot of patience to repair that. I'm just looking at the frustration we've shown towards Richard Arnold and the Glazers so far this transfer window. I'm looking at it and think, we've been so critical. Say, get the deals done. Okay, what's 5 million? Stop haggling over this. Go get Erik ten Hag's number one's target. If he's number one target, go get him. Doesn't matter what the price is. What's 50 million compared to 6 million? Just go get the business done. But then every time under Ed Woodward, we wanted to go get the business done, would be bent over a barrel. And let's say Anthony, we had to go pay 100 million. No, it was 100 million, but go pay over the odds. Lisandro Martinez, pay over the odds. Casemiro, deadline day or whenever it was, pay over the odds. Go get them in. I'm just thinking with all these signings so far in terms of Mason Mount, haggling that down from Chelsea's initial price. Now, they're probably never going to demand that initial price of 80 million, but sort of haggling that down. The Onana deal in terms of the unfortunate circus with sort of hanging around with David De Gea sort of thing, that took a little bit of time. And then this Hojlund stuff here, okay, he's the number one striker. Now, a lot of us would side on the fence that Harry Kane should be the number one target. But in Erik ten Hag's mind, this has been a name that's sort of been rumoured about since the first day of the transfer window. So he's obviously a huge target for Erik ten Hag. I'm just thinking, ultimately, these have all come in before the season has started. I'm just thinking, I don't want to give credit to the club, but in regards to, they have had to repair a lot of damage and not be sort of taken for ransom by other clubs. And I'm just thinking, does the club deserve a little bit of credit in regards to probably acting a little bit quicker than what we give them credit for?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. I think so. I mean, the fact that United, let's look back just at last season, a very recent example, right? We started the season really poorly. We lost our first 2 games, and one of those games in an embarrassing fashion. And all of a sudden, Casemiro and Antony came in the space of 1 week. So you look at it already just from that pure standpoint. And that was very reactive. Whereas United, this transfer window, have been proactive. And look, I'm not one to praise the Glazers, but with the looming takeover, which has been, obviously dragged out and prolonged due to a multitude of reasons, this transfer window had a lot of potential to go wrong. So let's give some credit where it's due. Now, it's probably the first transfer window since under Sir Alex Ferguson where things have been done really astutely. But nonetheless, all of Erik ten Hag's targets have come in. We secured Champions League football and we didn't take our foot off the gas. United brought in top caliber transfers. So all in all, I think it's been a very good transfer window, and there's a potential with the rumors, which we'll talk about shortly, I'm sure, to be a very good or exceptional transfer window. So, I think that to get all of Ten Hag's targets in before a ball is kicked in the season proper, you have to be happy with that.
On to Hojlund, look, which I agree, and I know you're not sort of crediting the Glazers. No one's giving credit to the Glazers. They just have to sign off on the checks as the decision makers in regards to Arnold, the recruitment team, Eric Ten Hag.
John Murtaugh deserves some credit.
John Murtaugh as well. Look, I think credit is the right word and the wrong word at times. I think in terms of you do need to apply context both to isolated transfers and obviously the whole picture as well. It's hard to weigh up. It'll be an episode by itself discussing the praise and criticism of those of the recruitment staff. But on Hojlund himself, £60 million, €70 million, 55 million, 10 million add-ons. It's a lot of money for Rasmus Hojlund. There's no doubt about that. In regards to at the start of the window and even now, I think we would both say if we had a choice, who would prefer Hojlund or Harry Kane? I think we'd side on the fence of Harry Kane. Hojlund, I don't think Harry Kane's going to happen now. I think the focus will now shift to Amrabat. I think if we're going to get Harry Kane, I think there would be a lot more sort of concrete rumours at the moment. It's just sort of speculation and interest. So I don't think Harry Kane will happen now, especially after this outlay for Hojlund. I'm just thinking, yes, we're going to be happy about it because we're Manchester United fans. Whenever you get a shiny new toy, we're going to sort of dress it up, of course. And obviously Hojlund is a talent. There's no doubt about that. But just on a sort of scale of 1 to 10, considering business and the potential future of him, and there's also the unknown. We're not experts on him. We've only sort of seen the YouTube snippets. How happy are you with the signing of Hojlund? Because while we are happy, there are obvious questions.
It is a good signing, and I am happy with it. It's good to see. Pardon me. It's good to see United making a long-term signings because it has the potential to have. It's the potential signing to have a player for 10 years, if not more, if it all goes well, right? So, with that side of it, you have to be happy. Where I'm critical, though, is Hojlund should be complemented by a main obvious first choice. That's why I'm a little bit frustrated. This kid now, unfortunately for him, is going to have extra pressure. And that pressure is because of the transfer fee, because Martial apparently doesn't stay fit, there might be an expectation that he has to score 15, 20 goals this season. Now, is that fair to ask of a 20-year-old who's coming from another league? So that's the big question mark, right? So now if you sign to Harry Kane and Hojlund, as an example, well, then you've got a 20-year-old who gets to sit on the bench, deputise for a main striker, come in cup games and gradually be integrated into the team, perhaps an impact off the bench style player, or maybe gives you the flexibility to play a two-striker system in certain situations. Instead, he's going to be expected to be a focal point because, let's face it, none of us expect Anthony Martial to stay fit for the entire season. And to be honest, if you do expect that, I'd say you have rocks in your head. So all in all, am I happy with the signing? Yes. Am I happy with the pressure and the situation in which he's now going to face? Yeah, of course, I'm a little bit skeptical.
You mentioned a few numbers there. Again, trophies will fix all. He could score 1 goal and we win a treble. And I just said we don't care about how many goals Hojlund scored. So I'm just thinking, considering just Hojlund off the sort of top of your head at the moment, what is a successful season? And you can almost have two answers. You can have an answer in regards to Manchester United standards. So he's coming in going to be Manchester United striker. What should Man United striker be scoring? Or you can look at it from the point of view that he's a young Danish kid who's had probably half a season in Serie A, who scored a couple of goals there, coming into a new league to play for the biggest club in the world. So I'm looking at Manchester United striker. He should be scoring 20 goals next season. But I also look at the fact that who he is a kid from Denmark who scored a handful of goals in Italy. I'd say 10 goals would be very good. A very good return. So I'm just thinking that that's two different things. You'd have to double that to make sort of Manchester United standards. I'm just thinking, I'm not sure where it is. Maybe a good season potentially then is maybe, I don't know, 15 goals and 10 assists if he can potentially sort of provide a bit of link-up play. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure what a good season looks like for him because I think he could be very good. I think he could help the team a lot. But in regards to the price tag, in regards to being Manchester United's number 9, no matter what numbers he puts up, and while someone sounds like him who's across the road in Erling Haaland, he'll always look like a bit of a failure. And I'm just thinking, again, that's not fair on him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly my concern. I think a successful season for him is 10 goals. I think that should be the target. And to expect a 20-year-old coming in from another league, like we've said, who wasn't exactly first choice for Atalanta throughout the entire Serie A season, it wouldn't be a fair expectation on him. And I think you have to look at it as this is a 20-year-old coming from overseas, playing for Manchester United. If he scores 10 goals this season, that's a good season, as far as I'm concerned. Actually, the pressure's on Anthony Martial to stay fit and actually be the focal point, which he should have been last season. Because if Anthony Martial does his job, then this kid will have an opportunity to be integrated into the team. So, United need a lot to go their way for that to happen. But it's possible. We remain hopeful and optimistic, if not practical.
Yeah, no, I agree there. Chris saying I'm 50-50 on him. I had no idea about him except for the YouTube. Yeah, look, I've only seen YouTube. I haven't seen any matches for Denmark or Atalanta in full, I have to be honest. And look, what do you make of the play from what we have seen online of him, just in regards to the comparisons to Haaland are there? Scandinavian, blonde hair, left footer, physical, can get him behind, he's quick. Now Erling Haaland has a few more goals next to his name, of course. I want to get those Haalands and Hojlunds mixed up throughout the season. I'll be calling Hojlund Haaland. I'll be calling Haaland Hojlund. It's just everyone's going to have to deal with that throughout the season. But of the type of player, we know what type of player Anthony Martial is. We know what Harry Kane would bring. We know what Rashford's sort of pros and cons are up through the middle or to the left. Rasmus Hojlund now through the middle for Manchester United. Now, obviously, he's going to develop. Now, hopefully he develops into a top player. But no matter, his game will change over time, no doubt. But from what we have seen at the moment, his attributes and his traits, from what you've also seen of Erik ten Hag, is it a fit?
Yeah, it is a fit. I think he's a versatile striker. He's quick, not Rashford quick, but quick. So deceptively fast. He's big. He's 6'2", 6'3". He's a big body. I still think he'll fill out. So he's physical, just purely by the size of him. Back to goal is okay, not brilliant. Again, he's 20 years of age. There is an element of development. Haaland, for as brilliant as he is as a goal scorer, still has gaps in his game. I think he'll need time. But he might be one of those players where sometimes it just clicks for him. I think there's every opportunity he hits the ground running in the Premier League. He might run away with a chunk of goals to start with, and then he might get eased in or drop off.
Is there a case though? Or you continue with your point about Haaland.
So even Haaland had a dip off at some point in the Premier League season. Like obviously his goal to game was brilliant, but there was a period where Haaland wasn't scoring goals as well. Where that happened, because I suppose I'm not going to call it stat padding. I think that's a bit lazy, but I think in the case of Haaland, right, obviously he's he's complemented by a brilliant football team. So when Haaland doesn't score goals, he's still surrounded by brilliant players, and obviously being surrounded by those players who create countless and endless amounts of opportunity for you mean that he will obviously score a high amount of goals. Now, Hojlund, however, because United are not the finished article, if he's going through a dip-off, United as a whole might be going through a dip-off, and that's the problem. Because you're a young kid settling in and the team around you perhaps isn't quite perfect, if he doesn't start scoring goals, then the rest of the team's performance likely is going to be falling off. Whereas City obviously got the depth where if Haaland's not scoring, they've got so many other brilliant players that they can just bring in. It's never fair to just look at a player in isolation. I think you can always look at a player and say, well, Michael Carrick, for example, made a lot of midfielders look a lot better. Like it's always the compliment. We always talk about Rio and we talk about Vidic, and both players were brilliant individually, but obviously it was the team that made those players elevated. And the same applies with strikers, and that's why we got to be patient with this kid.
You bring up the point in regards to it might just click, and fingers crossed, obviously, as Man United fans, we hope it clicks and he sort of goes and has a sort of record-breaking season and hits the ground running. But is there a case in regards to say, okay, if you want to isolate it to an individual or the collective, let's say draw a situation where it's not proven sort of fruitful, we're having a bad season as a team and the individual's not quite clicking by his sort of individual stats. I'm just thinking, is there a case where he's thinking it's a long-term signing, because obviously he's young and it's a sort of big money investment, so we think, okay, he's going to be a strike for 5 or 10 years. But is there a case now, while everyone in the chat here, in terms of quite level-headed, you and me, would try to believe we're quite patient with a lot of the players, we definitely won't sort of jump ship and sort of throw him out if he has a bit of a dry spell and doesn't score the goals. But is there a case he kind of unfortunately just has to? Because let's say he doesn't score a lot of goals. Let's say he scores 3 or 4 goals. Manchester United finish 6th or 7th, which unfortunately, fingers crossed, that's not the case. But if you look at the competition, if we have a bad season, that's simply going to happen. Hopefully we have a good season, but any of the big teams have a bad season, you're going to finish 6th, 7th, 8th sort of thing. And I'm just thinking if that is the case, which is a likely look, I'm not sure if it's a likely situation, but it's definitely possible that Rasmus Hojlund scores 5 goals and Manchester United don't finish in the top 4. Fingers crossed that's not the case, but that is potentially a situation. I'm just thinking then, next transfer window, Erik ten Hag's job's on the line because we haven't qualified for the Champions League. I'm just thinking here, Harry Kane's on a free transfer sort of thing. Hojlund actually, unfortunately, has the pressure. He simply has to work this season.
But this is the point I was making, and I don't think it's really fair to ask a 20-year-old.
No, it's not fair. It's just the reality of the situation.
Well, it will be up to people like us to actually temper people's expectations because he's 20 years of age. United are this transfer fee is paying for potential because the reality is, right, there's not many Hojlunds running around in world football. There's not many up-and-coming strikers where you're like, he's the closest thing to a sure thing that there is. He's probably the next cab off the rank in terms of, like, if Haaland's up here, Hojlund's probably just down here. And I don't think there's anyone else that I can think of off the top of my head who's in that same bracket in terms of that age, has the potential, has the attributes to be a...
I haven't seen much of him, obviously, so I remember the World Cup as well. Moani, the French striker, he was linked at the start of the window. But again,
he for Frankfurt, I want to say.
Yeah, but he was looking around, potentially around 100 million as well in terms of the Osman price tag. So, look, with no sort of great knowledge of either player.
Well, isn't he? I think, is he around 25, I want to say?
Oh, potentially. Yeah, I'm not an expert. Just this point here from George, and I've made this point with pretty much every, besides Onana, who's a goalkeeper, so that's a defensive position, but he's the most attacking goalkeeper you've ever seen in your life. Besides Onana, every other sort of arrival for Erik ten Hag, I'm always almost looking at more of a defensive aspect, even if they're attacking player Mason Mount. Okay, I can see what Mason Mount does on the ball, but I'm looking, Erik ten Hag's probably also looking at the defensive aspect. And Rasmus Hojlund, a number 9, a striker, that's an attacking position where you're looking at goals, of course, but in regards to, you look at the difference between Cristiano Ronaldo and Weghorst, there was a strong case that Weghorst is actually better for the team, and it was a defensive side of things which made the team better. Now, you could argue goals or defensive work rate, that's up for interpretation, but in terms of what Erik ten Hag wanted, you could see a situation where he valued Weghorst a little bit more. And it's crazy to think a number 9, the most important trait in this system at the time, was a defensive trait. And I'm just thinking, I do look at Mason Mount coming in, and he's very similar to Christian Eriksen in regards to ability, but his defensive sort of capabilities put him above Christian Eriksen, in my opinion. So that's why he's almost brought in. He's an attacking player, but he's in the team because he's defensively better. And I look at George here saying, I heard he works defensively up front as well. Just in regards to what Erik ten Hag wants from his front men in regards to pressing, is there a case we're looking at goals? Okay, is 10 goals a good season? Could Erik ten Hag maybe say, look, I'm happy with 5 or 6 goals if you win the ball 5 or 6 times a game in dangerous areas and other people score goals?
I don't think so. Look, a striker's job is to score goals. I think that there has to be a level of expectation, right? Weghorst scored 2 goals in January to July. So if this guy scores 6 goals, then he's in Wout Weghorst territory. Surely he's better than Wout Weghorst. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm just saying, like, could the attributes...
It has to be higher than that. I think 10
No, but I'm just saying, could Erik ten Hag view his quality this season more so, or value his sort of role in the squad or in the starting 11 more as a defensive thing? You don't pay the money
that United have paid for someone who's going to score 5 or 6 goals. You just can't. Like,
if you were to put, who would score more goals up front this season in a number 9 position, Marcus Rashford or Hojlund?
I think Marcus Rashford would.
Why is Hojlund playing? Why would Hojlund play?
Because you're allowing Rashford to play in his preferred position, and actually because you've got a player.
Look, I agree, but then put Garnacho on the left, and maybe he develops. And I'm just thinking, look, I agree with all your points, but I'm just thinking defensively, I think Hojlund maybe that sort of.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of his complementary package. Absolutely, it is. But you can't say a striker's in the team for his defensive mouse. Like, that's nonsense.
Oh, no, it's what I mean. I said Onana is a goalkeeper, but he's kind of he's in there for his attacking ability.
Onana can also shot stop. I think people over egg everything, right? Like Onana is good with his feet. That is the prototype of goalkeeper that Ten Hag wants. But fundamentally, he's also a good enough shot stopper. He's a decent shot stopper. He's pulled out decent match-winning saves in his career. Otherwise, he's not a complete goalkeeper. He shouldn't be a goalkeeper. He should probably be playing defensive midfielder.
I just look at where we've been hurt over the last 10 years in regards to how easy we've been to play against teams can just get the ball from their goalkeeper and just run through us. They just walk through. And I just see no better than, unfortunately, I like Christian Eriksen, but you see players that walk past Christian Eriksen, and you see players walk past Paul Pogba. I just see all our Manchester United players over the last decade have been good on the ball. They can all play football. It's when we don't. Do we have the sort of the fight and the determination and the capabilities to defend as needed? And I'm just thinking that is where I do think, from what I've seen in terms of what Erik ten Hag wants and what I've seen on YouTube of Hojlund, yes, obviously he's in there to score goals and hopefully he can sort of progress in his goal scoring, but I just think defensively might be his, I think potentially a strong point, which we won't focus on, but Erik ten Hag will.
I'll answer that a different way. I'll say that if he goes through a barren spell, he'll be kept in the team because he still works hard. So on the times when he's not scoring the goal, because his defensive output is so good, it'll get him to hold his place. The same could be said for Anthony. Now, Anthony's output hasn't been brilliant, and I think fans have probably been a bit extreme either side of his assessment of his
Anthony, that's the example. I was thinking of Mason Mount, Onana, I was thinking of someone else, and Anthony's the one, the prime example.
Yeah, works hard. Now, with the ball, could be better. There's still question marks over his long-term United career. I'm willing to say that because I think he has to be better than last season. But he's kept in the team because he does a job off the ball. Defensively, you can't question his effort. So I think you'll get the same out of Hojlund.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, we did get the Here We Go about 12 hours ago. So you would guess within, look, we never know with Manchester, I'd say within 2 or 3 days, we will get the official announcement. I think he actually was in England. I think Atalanta had a game against Bournemouth. I think he was with the Atalanta squad, but they didn't play him in the matchday squad because this deal was obviously closing in. So I don't know if he makes the trip up to Manchester and gets all the photos and medical done, but I'm sure there'll be news of that in the next day or two. But if you are happy with Rasmus Hojlund arriving at Manchester United, please do leave a like on the video. That'll cheer us up. And Larry, the next one off the rank, as I said, for me, it would be Harry Kane. I don't think Harry Kane's going to happen. It does look now like attention will shift towards Amrabat in midfield. Do you think it will, before we get into sort of one or two more opinions on Amrabat, the player and what he brings, do you think it's pending the sale of midfielders obviously we assume Fred is gone, but then let's throw Donny van der Beek and Scott McTominay in that discussion? Or do you think regardless of the outgoings, Amrabat's coming in regardless?
That's an interesting one. I don't think he comes in regardless. I think Fred or McTominay leave. Or Donny van der Beek.
I'll say Fred is gone. He's not even been considered for the tour in regards to, like, there's been no discussion of him joining back up or anything. There's no injury or anything. He's just been there. There's 3 or 4 clubs in. So I'm going under the assumption Fred's his future's away from United.
Yeah, I think Fred's future is away from United too. Obviously, he hasn't featured on tour yet, has he? He hasn't played.
He hasn't gone.
That's an interesting one. I think he will leave. I expect Donny van der Beek to likely leave as well. So, and I think let's not. It's a shame he's injured now. Looks like he's expected to miss the first 8 weeks of the Premier League. But I think Kobe Mainoo might actually feature a fair bit this season as well. So, all in all, I think Amrabat will come in. I think that's looking very likely. The thing is, when you hear links with players like Amrabat, it's not a sexy name. I think that when you hear those sorts of links, you do have to sit back and listen, because when United aren't linked with a sexy name, they're more than likely in for them. Because I think you'll always be linked with the likes of Harry Kane and like Martinez from Inter, for example. Like always these glamour names, right? Yeah. I'm sure we'll be linked with Vinicius Jr. at some point in the next few years. But nonetheless, I think it improves United's midfield, which we debated on the last video, didn't we? And if he comes in as a squad player, is he an upgrade on Fred? Oh yeah, he's an absolute upgrade on Fred. Can he come in and deputize for Casemiro crucially? Yes, I think he can. And that's actually where I see the value. If you can allow Casemiro to get rested, then I think Casemiro's output will be better over the duration of what's a long season. And sometimes it's not always about strengthening the starting 11, which I know we say is your ideal squad player, but sometimes if you can get a player in that allows your elite players to have a rest, sometimes that's equally as valuable.
Yeah, look, I've started to give it a bit more thought, and about 3 weeks ago, the Amrabat link started 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I wouldn't say against it, but I was like, oh, hang on, this is definitely not a priority, which I mentioned on the last couple of shows, but I have warmed to it, obviously, and as I said, he'll be my favourite player when he's holding up the scarf. I'm fully aware of that, but coming around to the idea, especially sort of looking at, again, I shouldn't be doing YouTube scouting, but I'm sure like everyone else in the chat, I've been doing full of Amrabat and Hojlund YouTube scouting over the last 24 hours. What I have picked up in regards to, as I said, the last 10 years, I've discussed the last 10 years of Ed Woodward and sort of the damage that's been done, but also on the pitch what has been done and sort of so many of our limitations defensively through midfield, how teams just walk through us. And I just think teams don't walk past Casemiro, but if Casemiro can't sort of cross, he can't cover the 70 metres of the width of a football pitch, suddenly you have someone next to him. That is actually going to be quite a physical battle for teams to get the better of. Now, how's Casemiro and Amrabat going to dictate a game in regards to control? That's up for debate, and that's for the future to tell us what happens there. But defensively, I just think so many games, whether it be away at Anfield, away at Manchester City, away in Europe somewhere, I just think where we get overrun and sort of we lack that experience, we lack that physicality, we lack that nous. I think, yeah, if you go up into a game where, away at Anfield in the middle of December, whenever it is, and you got Casemiro, Amrabat, and Bruno Fernandes, I think, I'm a little bit more confident there in regards to legs and getting around the pitch. So the more I think of the Amrabat signing, again, it would come at a cost for me. I do think you can't go spend stupid money there. I do think for what he is, you do need to, and again, it's not my money, and look, we're begging the Glazers to spend the money, of course. So I know I'm quite hypocritical there, but I don't want to see us go splashing sort of £50 million on him. I think the type of player he is, and we're dealing with Fiorentina, and a player, if he's desperate to come to Manchester United, which he sounds like he potentially might be, he could hopefully apply a little bit of pressure to Fiorentina, and this could get done at a somewhat respectable price. But I say respectable price now. I know it's hard. Declan Rice and Saudi Arabia have changed. I know 2 different deals, but Arsenal paying $100 million for Declan Rice, and what Saudi Arabia doing, it's changed the market. Right? You can't go get an Amrabat for $30 million, maybe, simply because of those 2 bits of business.
Look, I think you can. Maybe not 30 million, but maybe 30 to 40. I'm not sure. I think whatever price has been released, United have managed to get the deal done for less. So I like every other transfer. I think you start at your high point, and then the rest is a negotiation. And there is always a negotiation to be had. And I think Amrabat will land somewhere around the 30. I think he'll land in the 30s in terms of £1 million. Pardon me. And I think that's good business. If the likes of the Declan Rice's transfer sets the trend for the rest of the transfer market, then we're all screwed, because respectfully, Arsenal got their pants pulled down and got a finger up their butt, mate. Because honestly, that is not a £105 million striker. It happened because David Moyes said it once in a press conference, and some idiot at Arsenal said, I want some of that. Honestly, like, he's a good player. It's not £105 million.
Is that something teams, or whether it be teams or clubs or potentially just individuals themselves, can take advantage of in the future in regards to, we're going to see, I think, in the next 5-10 years, players are going to start to run down their contracts so they can potentially sort of test free agency sort of thing. I'm just thinking, could it be a public sort of a bit of a negotiation sort of ploy in regards to setting your own price tag and saying, I'm worth this, who wants to pay it? And just where perception is reality, that sticks, as I say. It stuck with Harry Kane on a golf course. Yeah, I think around £100 million if someone came in for that. I'm sure Tottenham would accept it and say, okay, Harry Kane's worth £100 million. Jack Grealish had $100 million clause. It wasn't a clause, but it was a verbal agreement with Aston Villa in regards to he's going to have to be the most expensive British player. Okay, that'll be $100 million. So if someone comes in for $100 million, you're going to go. Declan Rice, West Ham, and $100 million. I'm just thinking, could players now just go and say, yeah, I'm worth $50 million. Someone come knock on my club's door.
Kylian Mbappe, perfect example of that. And not just that, if you're a player and you run down your contract, you know what's actually going to happen. When they're negotiating, they're going to say, well, I'm going to run down my contract, so that transfer fee that you were going to pay, make that my sign-on fee. Or give me a sign-on fee of $10 million.
That's the nuts and bolts of exactly what they're doing.
Exactly. So, you know, I think that will happen more and more because the thing is, like the way that transfers are going, it's simply not sustainable. If you're a football club, would you rather pay 105 million pounds for a Declan Rice, or would you rather put that money into your academy infrastructure and start finding the next Declan Rice in your academy? Because I mean, really, that's what these teams should be doing. I think, like I said, I think, and that's not a knock on Declan Rice. I think he's a very fine Premier League midfield player. He's above average midfield player, but he's not for that kind of money. Honestly, I'm just trying to think what's the prototype of midfielder I would expect that kind of money for. The impact that Michael Carrick had at Manchester United when he was signed from Tottenham, I'd accept 100 million in today's market because Carrick was he oversaw the most successful period in United's history, and he's dead set. He's the signing that kind of brought all the pieces together. So for a Michael Carrick, I pay 100 million. Is Declan Rice going to be Michael Carrick? Not even close.
Yeah, no, look, you don't need to convince, and I completely agree, but you don't need to convince me in regards to one of the biggest fan of Declan Rice. I was always subconsciously hoping he didn't join Manchester. And look, he's a good player, but I was hoping he didn't join Manchester, and I just don't rate him. I rate him as a good player, yeah, but definitely not as that top level player. He might prove me wrong, but George saying I did think he'd get injured, so it'll be interesting if he's fit for the start of the season. I think Arsenal played Nottingham Forest. I think the first game of the season, but my God, those games are 2 weeks away. I think Arsenal play Forest on a Saturday night here. Must be Saturday lunchtime in the UK. United until the Monday night kickoff, which is Tuesday morning here in Sydney, which is a bit of a tricky one. But any other talking points, Larry? I don't think there's actually been, besides the Hojlund, here we go. And I'm sure we'll definitely go live when we get official announcement from the club sort of thing, because that always hits a little bit different when you see the photos and everything. But other than that, we're all kind of, I'd say, confident around Amrabat. There's no real. There's one Italian journalist saying, "Yep, it's happening." I just think we're all going, "Okay, it's happening because he's saying it." There hasn't been too much sort of concrete information around it, so it'll be interesting what happens there. You could very well see 5 years ago, within 12 hours, he would be signing at Liverpool. That's how those deals sort of work. Or when you sort of get that close to a player. So Amrabat, I would be quite confident happens now. I think potentially, you might have to wait for 1 or 2 deals to get over the line in regards to Fred. Could potentially Harry Maguire's situation. You're looking at situations with Dean Henderson, sort of thing. He's still on the tour. He's very likely to leave. 1 or 2 others as well. So no actual news really, besides the Hojlund stuff. But any other talking points? Just a comment here from Chris. Good to see you, mate. Off topic, just found a 96 jersey. The 94 Umbro jacket, yeah, 2 of the best things you'll see. 96 jersey, definitely one of my favourite kits. I assume the one you're talking the black collar with Old Trafford in the background, blended into the red. Definitely one of my favourite kits. And the 94 Umbro jacket, I'm pretty sure the one you mean, the big red and black sort of diagonal sort of stripes. Yeah, 2 of the best things you'll ever get. Manchester United, if you haven't got them. But George, do United go and get a 30-year-old striker? I would, Larry. Now, my 30-year-old striker would be Harry Kane. But maybe not 30. I'll tell you who would be the perfect signing now, regardless of the baggage, just the footballer. Cavani. You'd go get Cavani now again. Without the baggage. Well, without the baggage, without the injuries, without the connection to Uruguay. Just in regards to, okay, Hojlund couldn't be your man.
I don't care about
the player. Just the player.
I'm trying to think. You know who I would go get, actually? Danny Welbeck. I would probably go for the season's pro. He's reliable. He can come in and play a couple games for you. Danny Welbeck's now Danny Welbeck's not prolific. He obviously didn't have the career that Cavani had, but solid enough. And I think he does a job for you at number 9. And if Danny Welbeck's your backup striker, I think that's a pretty. If your rotation for this season is Martial, Hojlund, Welbeck, I think that's a very strong front 3. And if you can stop Rashford from ever needing to play centrally, that's doubly brilliant, because I think United at times this season, let's not forget last season, outside of having a strong 11, United had no impact off the bench outside of an 18-year-old Alejandro Garnacho. Now, imagine if we had a bench where you have Welbeck, Hojlund, Garnacho, one of Pellistri or Sancho, for example, or Anthony, whatever, or Ahmad. Now, suddenly that bench has punch and you got game changers. So, I think I think that's the way I'd be going. If United can actually have a bench that can actually make a difference, then that's a point of difference. I don't want to be relying on an 18, 19-year-old winger against Manchester City to make a difference. I want to be able to look to the bench and say we've got tactical fluidity because look at the caliber of player we have.
Yeah, no, look, I don't know if Danny well, but now my internet looks choppy. Larry, kick me out if I need to be, but we're about to wrap up anyway. Just in regards to, you mentioned Brighton, Danny Welbeck. The name for Brighton for me is Evan Ferguson. A price tag, Evan Ferguson this time next year. I'm telling you what, if he scores 15 goals.
Hojlund now signs though?
No, just his price tag to Chelsea, to Arsenal. I'm telling you, if Evan Ferguson scores 15 goals this season, I'm telling you, he's going for 150 million.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, particularly if all those goals are in the Premier League, for sure he would. Because
I just look at what Brighton are doing with their price tags. If Casido's worth 100 million, I think if Evan Ferguson has a good season, and sort of the desire for goals, Evan Ferguson will go to the top of everyone's transfer list.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And he's definitely got the potential for it. I don't know where there's a few people talking about Greenwood. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything to suggest that. I don't think there's anything to suggest he'll come back.
Let us know if anything is happening with Mason Greenwood. Just scrolling through Twitter, can't see anything. I did see Adidas, as we spoke about the other day, in regards to these secret talks. Adidas came out and said, the report was from. It wasn't even new. It wasn't even a news article. It was the Sun saying there were secret talks. It could absolutely be nothing. Chris here saying Sky Sports mention. I'll have a bit of a scroll around. If there is sort of big breaking official news, we'll definitely go live because never short of a Greenwood discussion. Mum, good to see you. She's tuned in. I'll buy your ticket this week's Powerball, which is 100 million. You can buy any player you want. I'll keep the 100 million for myself. I wouldn't spend it on Manchester United, but any player you want, Larry. Doesn't need to be the perfect fit for Eric Ten Hag for success, but just your selfishness. Someone you want to see in a red shirt, 100 million. Who are you bringing into Manchester United?
100 million. If I had 100 million, who would I bring in? I mean, the obvious answer is Harry Kane, but I feel like that's a bit boring. So I want to try and think outside the box. Let's think outside the box. 100 million pounds. Who could I buy for 100 million pounds? Maybe a bit of a different choice. Maybe not as sexy a name as people would expect. I would be all over Marco Verratti from PSG.
George has a name for me. I'll potentially would. Verratti, I agree in terms of liking the player. I think I could negotiate that pretty well and get that down to about 50 million for Verratti. But Valverde from Real Madrid, I think he's definitely a talent. I think anyone from Real Madrid, Napoli striker Osimhen. I think anyone from Real Madrid at the moment should obviously take it. I feel
like Osimhen's going to dip off. I just got this feeling.
Oh yeah, I don't see and he's had a great season in Italy, of course. I don't see the great career there. But they're the players for me. I always sort of flip and flop on who I have ahead of each other, but Pedri and Gavi. I'm not sure which one I prefer. It changes on a weekly basis. For me, probably Pedri. But Pedri. One of those Barcelona players. Anyone from Barca or Madrid, I'll take. But will be interesting. I'm going to have to start scrolling.
Player, I got to say, Vinicius Jr. is unreal. And I like Rashford, don't get me wrong. And I thought what Rashford did last season was impressive and a big improvement. But Vinicius Jr., I think he's another level. I think he's another level up on Rashford.
Oh, yeah, no, he's I don't want to say like a little bit more quality, but he just got that little bit more quality in terms of everything he does, which obviously does make a big difference. That's not to be critical of Marcus Rashford. But any other talking points before my internet says that's enough internet for tonight?
No, mate. I think you turning into ChatGPT is a good sign that we should probably wrap up.
Not sure what it is. Happened the last couple of days, but until then, make sure to leave a like on the video if you can still hear me, and subscribe if you're new. And Larry and I will chat to you when this Greenwood stuff becomes official.
Absolutely. See you soon.
Cheers.